Hi, Rayne here with some random shiz about space today. So we're going to talk a little bit about stars and their distance and their true understanding of what that means in terms of how quickly we could see anything in space that would be resembling anything technologically advanced. And the only thing that comes to my mind when I think of a star that could do that would be KIC 8462852, or better known as Tabby Star. Now, Tabby Star is a very distant star. The light that we're seeing from it, or that we witnessed the going out of the star in 2016, took 1,468 years for that light to get here. So, whatever advanced civilization is there that has encompassed that star and has put it out essentially from existence, they cannot locate the star anymore. That means that that was 1,468 years ago. So whatever advanced civilization lives there, they're that far advanced beyond our capabilities and more. So it would stand to reason that if we were going to hear anything from them, it would be probably kind of soon. I would say in the next 10 to 15 years, roughly, if that's an accurate time assessment. Now, not only are we looking at a distant star that's an F-type main sequence star located in the constellation Cygnus, approximately 1,470 light years from Earth, usual or unusual light fluctuations of the star, including up to a 22% dimming in brightness, were discovered by a citizen scientist and part of the Planet Hunters project, according to Wikipedia sources. It is distance and coordinates is, let's see, Romeo Alpha, 20th, 6 meters in 15 seconds. The December portion of the constellation is in the sky at 44 degrees and or by 27 by 25. So luminosity is bolometric is 4.8 and or 4.68, and speed color V index would be 0.557. That's what it says here. And the VR color index is 0.349. So if you're looking at through a radio telescope, those are the coordinates and the frequencies to try and see what the best colors are, or what colors it gives off. That's its magnitude rating. And the evidence suggests that KIC 8462852 is a mature star, that it has quite an aged past. So there's a good possibility that the star could have just blinked out, that there may not be any advanced civilization around it, but some of the discoveries and some of the signals coming from that area of the sky in the past have indicated otherwise. At least some that enough for them to start declaring this to be a class 1 or 2 or higher society. Based on their age and based on their scientific discovery of how to build a sphere around a star. Now, that's a large object. Now, we're talking large, not small. This would take a tremendous amount of resources and a tremendous amount of time to build something of that size, even large enough to encompass an orbit of a star that would not destroy the host or the person trying to receive the energy from the star. So whatever civilization built this around it, it was probably done to absorb most of the solar energy and electricity from that star and then turn it into power used by a planet nearby or by people who live on the sphere itself that is now built around the star. Now, these theories that exist around the star are simply just, well, they're theories. In most cases, we don't really know what it is. That if it's just a star blinking in and out of its existence, and maybe it was a dying star or had a binary pair around it that collided with it, caused it to go out, or the super civilization that lives there found a way to balance the two stars out and have since built a spherical object around the star. Man, I mean, that the fact that it could be a Dyson sphere is very intriguing. Now, the reason I say Dyson sphere is because of the physical object itself encompasses the entire star, collecting its energy and its entirety of its energy, blocking it from any other interaction, but suspended there electromagnetically in space. Now, you can technically do that with field resonance. You can build an object around a star and hold it in a stationary orbit around that star, tethered to its magnetic field. That would mean you would need something on the inside of the object that generates its own gravitational pull enough to tie into the magnetic field of the sun and be carried along beside it. Now, this also works for satellites in theory, that they're held in geostationary or geosynchronous orbits where they never lose position over their spot of the sky, and it means they don't move, appear to be not moving from the ground. So if you're looking straight up and you see a blinking light distant, I would say probably close to 60 miles up if you're looking at it with a telescope. I would recommend doing it with binoculars. Probably at night would be your best option, and just look straight up from your position. If your GPS pinged from your phone, there ought to be a satellite nearby. Now, if you're going to look for this, use good hunting binoculars that can see probably well beyond 20 miles and bring it to its like almost 30 feet, 40 feet away. That magnification, I would say roughly about that range for hunting binoculars that I've used, at least some of the more powerful ones, really long scope looking ones, not the small ones. Those are not going to get you the kind of magnification you need to see them. Now, the reason I say that is because you try to look at something 60 miles away, okay, with a telescope, or you're probably going to have to use telescopic binoculars, to be honest with you. That would be the best idea. This is the ones I used to look for satellites in the night sky. I haven't seen one, but that doesn't mean that this apparatus doesn't work. It just doesn't see that far. Now, there is a possibility that a bus-sized object viewed from the ground that's apparently 60 miles away would appear no more than a grain of sand from that distance, especially prospectively from the naked eye. If you're looking at it using a telescope or a pair of binoculars, it's going to be straight above your position, or in certain positions locked in the sky. It will not be moving. So that will be a very easy way to determine where it is and to search for it. Just do a grid pattern search of the sky and you'll find it. I haven't yet found anything, but if the satellites are indeed up there at that magnification, you should be able to at least see it as if it was a distant object, but still you'd be able to tell that it was one of ours, I would say, because of its coordinates. And NASA knows these coordinates, has them listed on their website. It may be accurate, but the GPS satellite coordinates do base and change from time to time depending on where they are locating them. Now, that does fluctuate depending on how the solar weather is, and if the sky is going to hold any more of that kind of action, and geothermal energy also has an effect on electromagnetic waves. Well, that's part of the effects of the EMF waves on the ground, is it causes geothermal activity because it's tied to the magnetic pole and the magnetic field of the Earth that moves the objects around. So that would be tied to our surface as well, but rather tenuously, because a solid object is not very affected by this force in nature, other than being directly manipulated by it in the form of hardening rocks. Once lava dries or cools down to form stone, the magnetic fields in that, or magnetic poles in any of the magnetic ore inside the stone, when it dries or when it hardens, will be aligned with the Earth's magnetic poles and field at that time. So when they look at old core samples of rocks, deep rocks, or at least the oldest ones they can find, they see these patterns emerging, and pole shifting has happened again and again and again in our past. It's not something that's uncommon, but it has on occasion caused some serious trauma to the surface when it has caused some of the surface rock to break loose from the mantle beneath. So there's a few books out there that cover this. Charles Hapgood's a good one to look into if you're really interested in that topic. Charles Hapgood has a very in-depth theory based on the crustal displacement that could occur with pole shift. But anyway, there are things that a star like that could do if it was putting out that much energy in a burst and then cooling down to almost nothing. And it did this frequently, it would do exactly that to a planet nearby. It would literally destroy the surface of the planet, anything habitable within the zones around the star that were or may have been inhabited by any living being in the past, because the magnetic field would fluctuate too much. And you would have a Mars type situation where the atmosphere would be cut loose from the star or the planet because of solar wind and radiation. Now, during a huge, huge explosion, this is also capable of happening on a star that is relatively our size. The star that's in our solar system is quite large, but still very small in comparison. It's even smaller than Tabby star. Now, Tabby star, in its distance, it's guesstimated it's around 1,468 light years away. Now, I would say that's pretty accurate. I mean, there are some indications that it could be 1,470 light years away. So there's a fluctuation in the distance, both in, I guess, astronomical units. It would be pretty close. But the light year itself is quite distant. So, yeah, I would say it's possible that there's something built around the star. Not that it's unlikely, but it's possible. Just that we can't really tell what anything is from that distance, and we can't see that far away with modern telescopes. We need to rely on radio telescopes to give us a picture of what it is that we're looking at. And radio telescopes can see farther than conventional mirrored telescopes, at least in some cases. But I think a zooming in of this sort of star would be necessary for anyone to study it, if we could find the location where it should be after we get some sort of telescope trained in its direction. But aside from that, the star itself is rather powerful and could have been utilized by an advanced race that has built a Dyson sphere around the star to harness its energy and electromagnetic field. Now, that can generate power as long as you know what you're doing and you're using passive electronics and very, very conductive material. Might have been why there was a lot of gold required by our ancients, because this sort of technology requires a superconductive metal. Now, that's the reason you need purified gold or silver or purified metals of any kind down to their monatomic element, where they're pretty much a very thin layer of super hard carbonized steel. But whatever. You know, fictional kind of stuff, but it's like titanium from Star Trek. Yeah. Transparent aluminum does apparently exist now, though. So that's an interesting concept. We have almost got a starship in our possible range of living, just years down the road, with this kind of glass that is actually made from, in fact, aluminum. Now, this technology can also be used to make smartphones. They will cost a shit ton of money, but hopefully by the time this occurs, that we start using this technology openly and widely, that the monatomic system, well, not monatomic, monetary, there we go, monetary system will be different, and we won't be functioning on the petrodollar anymore. Maybe a social currency will be better, one that doesn't require a job, just a social standard. And then you earn credit from the government each week to survive, basically, like a homeless person's pension. Not a bad idea. But in some cases, this is also one of those moments where um, you kind of want to think about things energetically. So, what on earth would they do with something that size? An object around a star that powerful would do a lot of interesting things for energy. You wouldn't have to run a nuclear power plant for any more time. They could be all shut down, especially if they use the magnetic field energy of the planet that we live upon. Tesla has this technology already developed, and we just have to put it into action and into practice. There are some places already starting to do new Wardenclyffe towers that do the same thing that the old one did, but better with modern technology, advancing on Tesla's designs, perfecting them, and making them better would be a good idea, especially for our future. And anyone is going to view it that way. So, anyhow, the implications of such a claim that they could have built a Dyson sphere around that star means they are beyond us in technology and advanced at least by another maybe 40, 50 years. If we clean up our acts, we can turn that into about 10 to 5 years. Quite easily, if we start doing things now and reversing what we have done to our planet with new, cleaner energy that doesn't utilize any burning of any fossil fuel of any kind. This is passive electronics, and you can even have vehicles work from the same principle, which means you can draw energy from the ether or the filament of our existence around us, which is reality. It is comprised of energy, lots of it, and the earth generates it freely. You don't have to put anything in the air. It's already there. It's just around you. The earth itself generates this energy. And if we are tied to that, then we can be powered along with the earth. The energy can be mutual, and you have an over compensator or whatever. The unbalance in the system allows an energy to be gathered by a vehicle, and you need storable power way to do that. And copper wire is good as a storage capacitor, I would say, large enough. And you put this in a spinning magnetized type deal for a while and create your own magnetic field around your car, toroidal field. This will then make that car weightless. No need to travel on the ground when your car can float. Now, when you can float, that means you can move this object with proper manipulation up or down along a ley line on the earth using magnetic field tracking and being tied into that magnetic field. The object will be locked in space above a single point on the ground. You can move this pole by switching the poles or rolling along with the magnetic field. You can dial in and constantly move around on the surface by changing coordinates. Now, this would be almost or near instantaneous movement between point A to point B. It would be substantially faster than how we travel now, but would need to be regulated at a speed. And the best way to do that is to pulse your magnetic field around your car or your vehicle that is using it to float, pulse it to move. So it's just point by point direction. So it's a gradual movement forward. You can do that with, I suppose, a timer, a machine that would keep time of those pulses and just put it out in a certain frequency and just dial in. So your local frequency would be generated by the electromagnetic field, which you're contained within. So you can then navigate on the ground using this craft. I would assume using some form of it definitely would be hovering. So anti-gravity is a very complicated thing to think about. But when you put it in terms of magnetism, it makes a lot more sense because the planet itself generates a magnetic field and there's poles all through it, monopoles in the realm around you or whatever. And those fields have fluctuations in certain areas and they're more intense in some and they are than others. And those are, basically hot points, or like where the pyramids are, where each pyramid is on the ground. That's also an intersecting area of ley lines. Now, these are called nodal points. Now, when the magnetic field fluctuates around the planet, these poles are also shooting out from these nodal points that have a local magnetic field on the surface between the surface and the sky, or the edge of our atmosphere, and then the larger magnetic field outside that, the mesosphere. Now, this area here around the outside of it is a magnetosphere that envelops our entire atmosphere, and our atmosphere is contained within that field. Now, it is contained through pressure and mass density. So that does mean that the only reason we have a dense collection of air around us at this level is because the elements are heavier than they are distant. So that gives us our atmosphere where we are. Because of the density, it falls to the ground. Its weight does get pulled down. And some particles are heavier than others, obviously, because you have dense matter that creates the ground, or everything physical that we run into that's a force that is not moving or solid. You know, a desk, whatever. Those things are made of heavier elements, of course, than anything in the air. You can release the energy from this by burning it, and it would turn it into ash, but the energy being released would go into the air, adding to that mass. Now, that's coming out in the form of carbon and other chemicals, I would say, if you burn the wood, but that does create a different atmosphere. Now, the magnetic field itself is generated from the Earth. We could use that to our advantage. I got off on a tangent there, but really, those issues around the Tabby star could be an example of that being utilized by an advanced race. That's part of the theory, that our nearest neighbor, 1,468 light years away, or 1,470 light years, give or take, this planet, or this star rather, has become a hidden or shrouded world as of late. So we are not entirely certain what is going on, but closer inspection may be in our future. I would expect some sort of reconnaissance to be in order for at least the orbit that the star used to possess, if we can locate that. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Anyhow, thanks for coming and watching, you guys. Have a great one. It's been a pleasure. Please like and subscribe if you want to see more videos. Thanks again.